to CEC Gurukul lectures. On the ongoing series of outcome-based education, today we will be talking on how do we teach in an OBE framework, that is the outcome-based education framework. Basically, there are three perspectives in this: transformative learning, learner-centric, and understanding by design. Now, I would like to give you one case owing to which you will understand the pedagogies of the OBE. A group of psychology students at the start of the term, they think that doing research is going to the library and compiling the information about a topic from the different books. The teacher knew about it by asking the students at the start of the class what research is. The teacher started to show examples of journals, articles, and how the research is conducted. The different methodologies and the use of the research was assigned, and then the students conducted their own research using the non-experimental design. And towards the end of the term, when the teachers asked again that is that research, the students see it as a process of arriving at a new knowledge and supporting the ideas through the data. That is, they collected the evidence, and this is how the concept of the transformative learning is all about. The transformative learning is a kind of a cognitive learning theory that results in the changes in the meaning and the perspectives that have developed over the individual's lifetime based upon their life experiences. Now achieved through becoming a critical reflective of the assumptions underlying content, the process or the premise through instrumental and communicative learning. Now, what facilitates the teaching learning process as far as the OBE is concerned? Number one, it is a disoriented dilemma. Number two, the critical questioning and the self-reflection. Number three, sharing of one's transformation process with the others. Now, exploration of the new roles and the actions, planning a course of action and the provisional underlying of the new roles and ideas, building up the competencies and the self-confidence in the new roles and relationships. Now, basically a reintegration into one's own life direction by one's new perspective is all about transformative learning. That is, the things which were known to you earlier, now they are no more there, and a new perspective has been added because you are into a OBE framework. Basically, you are trying to learn the pillars of the transformative learning, which is very important part of the OBE. Learning to know is the first pillar of teaching learning under this framework. Now, what do you mean by learning to know? The capabilities of basically making the connections, adapting to the changes and knowing how to learn is one of the major pillars of the teaching learning process. Now, learning to do is another aspect that is framed in the idea of the learner-centric learner with the leadership performance task that demonstrate the ability to apply the knowledge in a very, very creative manner. So basically, when you talk about the OBE, the major pillar we have talked about today is about how to learn and how to basically adopt that learning into the real perspective in the real way of life, that is the application of the knowledge which you have gained in a very, very creative manner. Now, another pillar of the teaching learning here is basically learning to live together. So basically using the concept of collaboration on a local and a global scale, and learning to be a lifelong journey of the self-discovery as a part of the process of learning. So these are the basic perspectives and the pillars of the teaching learning process, which is basically the overall, the center of the OBE. So let me give you a recap: learning to know, learning to do, and learning to live together, and learning to be the lifelong journey of the self-discovery. So that is, the discovery of the self is also a part of basically the OBE framework. Now, coming on to another important aspect of OBE, that is the assessment. What is the function of assessment? How do we help the students learn better through their assessment? In the previous sessions, I reiterated on this aspect that if you want to change the learning of the students, change the method of assessment. So that is why it is very important for us to understand that how do we help the students to achieve that journey by changing the perspectives, the domain and the aspects of the assessment. Now, basically when you talk about the features of performance assessment, what we have to assess about the students. So it is intended to assess what it is that students know and can do, with the emphasis on the doing. So here the emphasis is on the practice part, the emphasis is on the action part, and the emphasis is on the doing part. The more we do, the more hands-on training is, the more experiential learning will the students be doing, and it is definitely a win-win situation for the students as well as for the teachers, because teachers are helping in the journey of the learning by the students by doing. Because once you see a person doing a thing, the learning is, exponentially high, and you have a high degree of realism about them. That is, the authentic learning is there when you do on basically the hands-on training aspects of it. When it comes to the theory aspects, everyone is, where the free resources are available. On a click of a button, every information is there. But yes, when you come on to the OBE framework, the emphasis is on the practice part, on the doing part, on the experiential part. The delight and the overall learning is so authentic under this framework that you cannot quantify in the words, and definitely when you are able to do the practical aspect of it, that is what the performance assessment is all about in the framework of OBE. Now basically, when you are doing a particular thing, as far as the assessment part is concerned, number one is that you are involving yourself, and like activities for which there is no single correct, and basically assessing the groups rather than individuals. So testing would continue over extended period of the time, and the self-evaluation of the performance likely use upon the ended task among the assessing the higher level of the cognitive skills. So basically we center around the cognitive skills, we center around the practice part, we emphasize on the doing part, and this is what the performance assessment is all about. Now bringing the testing methods more than is what with the instruction. The assessment should approximately close what it is for the students should know to be able to do. Now basically, why do we emphasize the performance assessment is a big question mark under the OBE, because once last time I gave you the example of a software engineer. The moment you complete your studies and you join a particular company, and your HR manager asks you to design a software for a payroll system, or for that matter any of the program which is being done in the corporate level. So the answer of that student is no, because they were not given that kind of a practice session wherein the softwares were actually designed, the hands-on training was also given. So under basically this OBE framework, which was adopted in India in the year 2014, that is the Washington Accord. So this OBE outcome-based learning was adopted wholeheartedly by the Indian, specifically when you talk about the graduate attributes of the engineers specifically, so that we have a comparative analysis of Indian as well as the global scenario. So that is why we emphasize on the performance assessment, because when we actually perform, we are able to assess the students in a very nicer way, in a very discreet way, in a very clear manner, and that is why the direct measure of the skills of the interest is being inferred from that experiment. So that is why we say under this OBE framework, here we emphasize on the performance assessment, which is the soul of the OBE framework, where the experiential learning is on the top, and we are able to have the discrete skills which are being spill over onto the students, and the learning framework is fabulous. Now let me come on to how to implement an OBE framework in your institution, and that is the key soul of the success journey of the student. When we embark, or when we are on the path of the OBE framework, there is nothing which can stop you on the success path of the student life journey. Now, how do we implement this OBE in an institution? It is basically divided into 6 steps. The first is the assessment of the curriculum and the needs. The second is definition of outcomes. The third is basically collaboration. The fourth is the mapping outcomes with the subsets. The fifth is the feedback and the continuous evaluation, and the sixth is defining the contributors from the assessment and results. So we will be elaborating all the 6 steps in a very deep manner, so that we are able to have a complete catch of how to implement the OBE at the institution level. So step 1, assessment of curriculum and the needs. Now basically, when we are designing the curriculum and the needs of a particular program, definitely designing is primarily the focal point or the main point or the nucleus of any success program. Why so? Because we are going to teach under the OBE framework that particular aspects of the curriculum which is in demand, which is applied, and the stakeholders want the students to acquire those skills before they enter the employability aspect of that particular program. So we have some brainstorming sessions, we have some industry, industry, academia, intellect, dialect together, owing to which we are able to infer that yes, this is the curriculum which is in demand, which is demanded in the market, and the people who are going to have the placement of or the campus placement, they want the students to have those particular skills with them. So this assessment of the curriculum and the needs, which is there as the first step of the implementation part of OBE, is the most important. The collection of the data is most important, because if you are able to have the correct data about this aspect of the curriculum and the needs of the industry, we are on the right path. So we have to talk to the various stakeholders, we have to take the feedback of them, we have to define the OBE framework, we have to have a very much big clarity as far as the industry needs are concerned. So the next step we are going to implement about the OBE is the defining of the outcomes. So basically, as the name suggests, we have to talk on the outcomes, that is, from the requirement that you have collected from the stakeholders and the needs of the institutions, you have to define a goal and the skill you want the students to know and you want your students to achieve. So this is primarily the main aspect of OBE. There can be some major outcomes, that is the program outcomes, that will be measured over the longer terms, and some short term outcomes, that is the course outcomes, the program specific outcomes, that will help you to measure the achievement in the short terms, that you can improve and alter the teaching learning methods along with the way it is needed. So what is that? Basically, we are trying to define the outcomes, that is when the program is over or when the students are able to complete their particular course or a particular program for which they have joined that particular setup. So what is the intended outcome, what you are trying to prove? So that particular mapping, matching with the industry need and everything has to be streamlined together, and specific outcomes have to be designed. Only then that particular program can be a success. So you have to be very clear about defining of the outcomes, and the students have to be very particular about doing and selecting a particular course, because they want their life journey to be like that. The step number 3 is a collaboration. Effective communication between the various stakeholders and the decision makers is very, very important of the success of OBE. Now let every department, let every student, let every parent, let every industry expert and the key decision makers, they have to say in each step. So this will help you in bringing out a clarity on the process and assure the success in implementing the OBE. That is, you are not working in a separate setup. You are working in a society, and the society has various stakeholders, and those stakeholders can be your family, your parents, your department, your students, your friends, your industry experts, and basically there are n number of stakeholders with which you are connected. So let us put in their words, blend them together, have various collaborations to make the implementation of OBE a success. Now moving on to step number 4 for the implementation of the outcome based education. Mapping the outcomes with the subsets is another important parameter for the implementation of this framework. Now what does it mean? For instance, say your program outcome is a problem analysis and you are mapping the course to the computer department. then the analysis, if your students have solved enough problems in the theory of computation, could give you some kind of insights on whether these outcomes have been achieved or not. So that is why I gave you the example of a computer, because nowadays under the COVID situation you can very well comprehend this particular example. Now moving on to step number 5, that is the feedback and the continuous evaluation. Now basically the continuous evaluation is a very important aspect of OBE. As and when you are going through the journey of the particular course or a particular program which you have taken in your academics, so you have to see that how it is moving on, what is the, you take a continuous feedback from the students, that are they able to understand the program nicely, or are the outcomes coming on the way you want. So having a continuous updation on the feedback and the continuous evaluation of the students, the overall results which you are trying to have, you will be able to achieve. So you will be able to plug the gaps of where you are and where you want to go. So this plugging of gaps can be only filled by the student feedback, number 1. Number 2, by the continuous evaluation, and that continuous evaluation will be through the various pedagogies under which we check the problem solving skills, the critical thinking, and various aspects in the paradigms which that program demands. So if you are able to have that kind of a continuous evaluation, of course there is nothing which can stop on the success of OBE. Now moving on to the step number 6, that is the defining the contributions from the assessment and the results. Now basically we have started with the industry academia needs, we have designed the program, and we have talked on the placement aspect of the students. We have decided what pedagogies have to be in place, what particular programs have to be in place as far as the success of that program is concerned. And then we moved on with the various evaluation techniques which was a prerequisite for the success of the implementation of OBE. And we have come to know that under the student feedback and under the continuous assessment of the students, the success of OBE will be on the top, and we'll achieve the excellence as far as the implementation of the OBE is concerned. So now is the time for defining the contributions from the assessment and the results. After you have collected the data onto the problem solving skills, the critical thinking, and the various innovations and the evaluation techniques which were in place, now you have to define the contributions which you have derived from the various assessments like exams, assignments, some live projects, some case building, some case solving, etc. So you have to document everything, you have to map everything as far as the achievement of the particular assessment results are concerned, and this will definitely help in measuring the attainment of the outcome by determining how well the students have performed in an assessment, and you have to measure the correlated outcomes. Now this particular steps is so important that if you have a correct mapping of what industry wants, what you have designed as far as your curriculum is concerned, then keeping into consideration some performance assessment criteria, then deriving and mapping the results of the assessments which you have taken of the students and mapping it with the right kind of examination system, assignment system, project system, and of course after having a right kind of a mapping the result outcomes, etc., you will be able to have the right kind of assessment of the student, which is the heart of OBE, because you are measuring the student, you are evaluating the student on what the intended outcome is. Our intended outcome was that our student should be able to develop the softwares. If you talk about the software engineering side, if you are able to assess the criteria as far as the agriculture, he should be able to do the soil analysis. Then of course there not only the soil analysis but basics of organic farming and what seeds in what season, at what time, what temperature, what kind of manure, and what kind of hybrid variety yielding seeds have to be put in place. So basically what are we trying to prove? That in the practicalities, if we design a curriculum, that you have to actually relate it with the real time achievement of a human being. That if I am able to join this course and complete this course, the intended outcome or the eventualities is that I should have a catch of each and every aspect when I join the employability aspect of that particular course. So you have to have a very close linkages between what you teach and what you practice. So if there is a huge gap of theory and practice, then alas, the failure is inevitable. But yes, if there is you are able to plug the gaps of the practicalities aspect and the curriculum which the student is being taught, then of course the correlated outcomes, the intended outcomes, you will be very easily able to achieve, and that is the success of this OBE framework. Now, how do we implement OBE today in the higher education in India? I told you that India has become a member of Washington Accord as on 13th June 2014. Now this accord will improve the education standards and raise the quality standards at a level by which our students can compete and perform at global arena with the students which are across the globe and around the world. So basically what are we trying to prove here? That after signing of the Washington Accord in 2014, we are trying to achieve the global standards. Now we will be elaborating these aspects as and when we move on with the presentation. So definitely I would like to highlight one thing here, that whosoever is the member country of Washington Accord, they are together they have stood up to raise the quality standards, because there the criteria, the mapping, the other parameters are the same, and that is why we are able to have that competitive levels, that whether you do engineering in India or in US or in UK or in Europe or in Japan, they are rated at the same level, because as far as the curriculum, as far as the skills imparted, as far as the overall knowledge which you acquired, the skills which you acquire probably are the same, and slowly and steadily the whole world is moving towards one world, one education system, and if more and more participation and more and more signatories of Washington Accord is there, then definitely the day is not far. Then whether you study in India or abroad or any other aspect for that matter, we will be standing at the competitive level. So that is the basic importance of OBE and becoming a signatory of the Washington Accord. Now coming on to the difference between the outcome and the output. This is primarily one of the major aspects which we will be highlighting in the next session. So basically we have to understand this, that if we have to be competitive in this global world, then of course you have to adopt not only the Indian standards but the international standards, and for implementing the national standards you have to come up to the expectations of the global standards by implementing each and every aspect and embedding the culture what the Washington Accord is asking us to do that. And obviously the OBE today in the higher education in India is becoming more and more competitive as far as the global standards is concerned. So basically when you talk about the member signatories, slowly and steadily the rise of the membership we can see, and the overall aspects which we talk about the OBE is so beautiful that not only in the engineering field, if we implement this in the various aspects or the various programs, then of course we will be able to achieve the success of the students.